Aha, here it is, my new favourite twin tip of the moment, the ADHD Amplified Distortion. Well, like I say, it's my favourite. There are quite a lot of favourites, but specifically for charging around at full power and honking massive airs, this has my undivided attention. It's an all new board for this year, a new mould, new graphics, although it shares the same ethos as the old board, but with a bit more big air thrown in. The board itself feels quite loose underfoot. I use quite big fins in it and it really makes them feel small. It's quite skatey almost at slow speeds, but as soon as you feed power in through that back leg, the rail seems to dig in and the thing really hunkers down and it locks in. And in that, it encourages you to build more power, build more speed, and it's fantastic for woo use. You really can get a lot of energy built up in this thing with complete impunity, to be honest. The Shinn board this year has quite heavy channeling in the center of the board and at the tips, but you'll notice there's a flat section here which allows the tip and the body of the board to flex independently, and that gives flex back to the board that the channeling would normally take out. Shinn boards are well known for their excellent flex, their very plush feel and their very controlled nature, and this is no exception. It's quite unique in that as you get power forced into the board, instead of starting to try and flatten out, it actually does the opposite. It starts to dig in. That hillside rail really starts to drive into the water and it uses every single bit of its power back at you. But the whole thing's a bit like a feedback loop and you get a fantastic sense of drive from that back foot. Of all the boards in the range, this is the one that you can stick the fastest, most out of control, choppy, nasty landings that you would normally never think of riding away from. It's got a fantastic ability really to get you out of situations where you really shouldn't have got into in the first place. Even where I ride, where it's very flat inside, if you get a good boost, you travel a fair old distance out to sea, and by the time it comes to pinning it down, you're up to your calves in pretty nasty chop. And this thing, unlike many of the other boards that I've ridden, just seems to be able to keep its nose out and just seems to be able to keep its rail stable enough for you to actually carve out the other side. The rocker line is quite pronounced. This has more rocker in this than any other board in the Shinn range, and at first sight you would be forgiven for assuming that it's very power hungry, but these constant curve rocker lines are very surprisingly efficient. And not only that, with these boards in general, you tend to find that boards without constant curve rocker lines have set stances in which you have to adhere. Moving your weight outside of that set stance to the back or the front makes everything uncomfortable and forces you back into place again. Not so with these constant curve rockers. You can move your weight forwards and back and it still feels like you're standing in the middle of the board essentially. You're not compromised in terms of riding stance, and that makes it a very comfortable place to be. Also, constant curve rockers like this mean that you get a very limited excess loading on your back leg, so you can push a lot more power through into the board because you're not putting 75% of all power that going in through biased one leg. You have fair amounts of pressure going in through both, not 50-50 but pretty close, and that means you can ride hard for a long time. The rocker, though high, under powered conditions is no hindrance to the upwind ability of the board, which is more than enough. In light winds, well, maybe the flatter boards do go a little bit earlier, but if you've got a quick enough style to generate some apparent wind and you have a good enough kite, it's really not an issue at all. But when you start pouring power into the thing, that's when it really starts to dig down and take off. And once you're anywhere near jumping conditions, the thing is completely 100% practical anywhere on the break, even with tide. The weight of the board, well, it's not the lightest board in the Shinn range, but as my 95 kilo Wake Style sponsored rider pointed out, it's the only board he's never broken, and it's built to take a hammering. And finally, I would recommend that if you're interested in one of these, either give us a bell or get in touch with your local dealer and see if you can demo one. We'll be running demo events around the country as soon as the current situation improves, but for now, yeah, this is a brilliant piece of kit. I highly recommend it.